It's always an enormous plus when a game has some really solid enemy AI. When an adversary adapts to your skills, diversifies their methods, and relies on teamwork, you don't mind so much when they blow your head off, usually. Sometimes. Enemies like this are so great because they normally can't be defeated by button mashing or with a catch-all strategy. Instead, players need to study these villains moment by moment, looking for the exact opportune moment to strike. Enemies on this list may have killed us more times than we'd like to admit, but it's hard not to admire how well each of them was programmed. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are the 10 most formidable AI enemies in gaming. Number 10. Standard Goons, Sifu. To make things fair, open-world titles like Assassin's Creed have enemies take turns when they're attacking the main character. It might not be realistic, but it gives you a fighting chance. However, Sifu decided to do away with that trope. Although it's hard to discuss Slow Cap's innovative beat-em-up without focusing on the aging mechanic, that shouldn't overshadow the remarkable enemy AI. Even though the protagonist is a martial arts expert with 150 moves under his belt, going against a dozen thugs is no easy task, especially when they swarm you all at once. Though some enemies hang around in the back during a brawl, it's not to give you a chance. Instead, they're just waiting for you to let your guard down so they can pounce. After unlocking most abilities, you'd think these scraps would be a cakewalk. Instead, the baddies begin relying on cheap ploys. If you keep dodging their attacks, they'll sweep you off your feet. Other times, the goons hurl bats and pipes at you, chipping at your health while keeping their own distance. They'll also encircle you any chance they get just to stop you from escaping. It just goes to show that no matter how powerful you think you are, the simplest foe can humble you if you're not paying attention. Something you massively learn in Elden Ring when you beat a boss easily and then get taken out by a crab. Number 9. Guards, Perfect Dark. Rather than doing a direct sequel to GoldenEye 007, Rare released a spiritual successor called Perfect Dark. The sci-fi shooter took everything that made its predecessor stand out and turned it up to 11. It had a more diversive range of weapons, incredibly elaborate levels, and more complex missions. Also, Perfect Dark's NPCs are on another level. Rather than just mindlessly shooting at you, these adversaries rely on a wide range of techniques. If they're shot at, they'll take cover. If they can't hit you, they'll find a better spot to aim, sometimes going around the level to shoot you from behind. If they're supposedly disarmed, they'll pretend to give up, only to whip out a hidden gun when you're not looking. These enemies don't just act smart, they act like people. If a guard is shot in the foot, they'll drag their leg while chasing you. If their hand is blasted, they likely won't be able to fire a weapon with that arm. They occasionally react to one of their allies dying as well, saying things like, "He was my best friend," or "I never liked the guy that much." And that makes each encounter feel more authentic. Despite being over 20 years old, Perfect Dark's AI still puts some modern shooters to shame. Number 8. Bokoblins, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild has become one of Nintendo's most celebrated titles, continuously lauded for its open-ended and emergent gameplay and sprawling world. However, another aspect that deserves heavy praise is how the enemies behave. In previous Legend of Zelda entries, Link can wipe the floor with towering beasts once you memorize their attack patterns. But this time around, you can be overpowered while facing the simplest enemies possible, the Bokoblin. Although a lone Bokoblin shouldn't put up too much of a fight, it's a different story altogether when you're tangling with a horde. These critters can light their clubs or spears on fire, making each strike more devastating. Rather than fighting directly, they'll occasionally shoot explosives near you, catching you in the blast. When a projectile is knocked out of their hand, they'll run after it to avoid being unarmed. If they can't find a weapon, Bokoblins will toss stones, or even hurl one of their own companions at you. They run in diagonal arcs while on horseback as well, which makes it difficult to line up a shot. Sneaky strategies on your part, like relying on bombs, tend to backfire, since Bokoblins can kick the explosive back in Link's direction, or they can just jump out of the blast radius. If you try to lure one of them away, often they'll return to base, knowing that they're safer. The Bokoblins may be significantly weaker than enemies like the Guardians or Lynels, but it would be unwise to underestimate them. Number 7. The Covenant, Halo Combat Evolved. Being the debut title for Microsoft's first gaming system, Halo Combat Evolved had much to prove. The gameplay was a work of art, primarily because of the efficiency of hostile Covenant forces. Rather than running around guns blazing, the extraterrestrial dirtbags utilize specific strategies for every type of interaction. If you toss a grenade, they might lob it back. If you rely on defensive measures, they'll fire charged plasma shots to deplete your energy shields. To keep their position hidden, certain enemies don't attack until you get close. However, none of these alien critters can compare to elites. It's tough to overpower these highly intelligent fiends since they intuitively know when it's best to fight, hide, or retreat. They become more erratic and aggressive when they're on the fence, as a last-ditch effort to kill you. They prefer close-range combat, causing players to panic, and sneakiest of all, they sometimes cloak themselves and wait for you to approach before making the kill shot. Although the enemy combat has fittingly evolved since in later installments, there's no question that the original Halo's AI absolutely set the bar. Number 6. The Replicants, Echo. It's a pity Ultra went bust, since the Danish studio's only gaming project, Echo, was brimming with innovation. This stealth title centers around a genetically modified human called N, who awakens in a palace that spans the entire planet. While navigating through this alien terrain, you'll encounter enemy duplicates of N. Rather than formulating an elaborate behavioral pattern, the developers gave the enemies one simple tactic: mimicry. The replicants observe where you go, what doors you open, and what weapons you use. Then they repeat your moves, hence the title, to find and destroy you in the most efficient way possible. Basically, your actions teach your doubles how to kill you. If you hide behind a specific pillar, the doppelgangers will then lie in wait at the next given opportunity. If you try to run past them, they'll adapt and block you off. As a result, Echo feels like it punishes you for using clever strategies over time. If you're a master shot or an expert with stealth, then so are they. For this reason, players will feel inclined to save their smartest ideas for later, to stop the replicants from adapting so early. Number 5. The Cannibals, Sons of the Forest. End Night Games as The Forest received a lot of praise for its enemy AI, whose behavior is directly based on the player's actions. If you kill a cannibal's relatives or destroy their home, that specific enemy will go out of its way to hunt you down. Having said that, the sequel took things to a whole new level, thanks to the Veil system. Now, this AI program causes the cannibals to experience basic biological needs like fatigue, thirst, and hunger, which creates more complex behavior. If they're starving, they'll pursue their prey more viciously, and if they're exhausted, they'll be too tired to hunt at all. Not only that, the Veil system also dictates the cannibal's emotions. Depending on what's going on around them, the enemies can feel boredom, anger, or fear, which will in turn affect how they respond to you. However, there's no set way that they react to anything, so players can't rely on a specific way to outmaneuver them. If one cannibal dies, each of their allies will respond differently. One person might be too grief-stricken to fight, while another will go into a berserker frenzy to avenge their comrade. The unpredictability of the enemies elevates the survival horror elements and keeps players on their toes from beginning to end, as if it wasn't bad enough that you're being stalked by cannibals. Number 4. Factions, Tom Clancy's The Division 2. While putting together The Division 2, lead AI programmer Philip Dunstan utilized his expertise to create more nuanced combat. Using a proprietary behavioral tree system, the NPCs are always adapting to their environment, each other, and the player. Snipers reposition themselves to find the best spot to shoot you or to avoid being spotted. Enemy soldiers find the most appropriate cover based on where you're positioned. But even that said, the enemy AI isn't just programmed individually, but collectively. One enemy faction may act disruptively, rapidly repositioning themselves to throw the player off, while another might be more cautious, maintaining an optimal distance or retreating when things don't go their way. One team may give verbal demands so you can figure out what they're up to if you listen attentively, and then some factions communicate through visual signals, meaning you actually need to look at them to deduce their next course of action, although try not to get shot while doing that. Not only that, but enemies won't carry out their central objective if it's not in their best interest. Even though enemy medics are supposed to look after the wounded, they'll abandon their posts if the danger is too great. After seeing how naturally these characters interact and adapt, it's hard to believe they're computer-controlled. but computer-controlled they are. Number 3. Mutants. Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. In THQ's non-linear shooter, the player takes control of an amnesiac who must break into a nuclear power plant in Chernobyl. Due to the facility's high radiation, the locals have been mutated into monstrous creatures. On the surface, Stalker looks like a run-of-the-mill FPS, but thanks to the highly advanced A-Life engine, the NPCs have a level of intelligence that's rarely been seen in gaming before, or honestly since. The engine generates non-scripted behaviors for over 1,000 NPCs. These include eating, speaking, sleeping, and performing tasks. They also play out indefinitely, even when you're not interacting with them. The A-Life engine doesn't just generate full life cycles for the regular NPCs, but also for the monsters. These behaviors can include attacking, hunting, hiding, or migrating as a group. Now, this can work in the player's favor, since there's a period where the monsters need to sleep. And of course, that's the best opportunity to attack them. However, there's no 100% effective gambit against them, since no two have the same life cycle. Even though you can learn and adapt to the mutant strategies, you always have to stay on your toes to best them. Number 2. Uruk Captains, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Even though Shadow of Mordor was applauded for its combat performances and soundtrack, it was really the Nemesis system that received the most attention. This feature keeps track of every Uruk, monitoring how often they've survived an encounter or killed the hero. If they perform proficiently in battle, these overgrown goblins will be promoted to captains. At first, it seems like a good thing, since their defeat will bestow you with a batch of goodies. However, being killed by a captain will make them smarter and grant them additional power. Rather than facing them head-on, it's best to interrogate their subjects to learn how to exploit the Uber-Uruk's weaknesses. Even though this can be time-consuming, it encourages players to work smarter, which can ultimately make missions easier. By slaughtering the Uruk captains, you can create discourse amongst Sauron's ranks or convert his minions to your cause. The Nemesis system doesn't just provide a more tactical playthrough, but also a personal one. It's a memorable moment when you encounter one of your arch-rivals, since your actions directly fueled their vendetta, or your vendetta against them if you died. Since these confrontations are different upon every playthrough, it makes the whole experience extra special. Number 1. The Xenomorph, Alien Isolation. Often touted as the perfect organism, it's no surprise to learn the Xenomorph from Alien Isolation is also the perfect enemy AI. Although it appears as if the Xenomorph instinctually knows where you are throughout the main campaign, that's actually not the case. The hostile extraterrestrial is programmed with a 100-pointed behavioral tree. Now, this operates its actions and priorities, and at first, the alien only has access to 30 behaviors. As you progress, more of the Xenomorph's behaviors are activated, giving the impression that it's learning from experience. Even though this system makes the Xenomorph a formidable opponent, it never cheats. If you don't draw attention to yourself, the acid-spitting fiend shouldn't find you. However, don't think about hiding in the same spots, as the Xenomorph will memorize those locations. Though there are times where the difficulty curve seems unreasonable, the game is designed to balance the odds in your favor, thanks to the invisible menace gauge. If the Xenomorph has you boxed in, the menace gauge will encourage it to look elsewhere, giving you a chance to escape. Despite the developer's best efforts to keep things fair, it is a Xenomorph at the end of the day. No matter how careful you are, this nasty parasite is sure to rip you to shreds many, many times.